Prince Harry issued a statement last night saying he and other Afghanistan War veterans should reach out to each other and offer support, and described the scenes from Kabul as ones that resonate in a message to his charity for wounded veterans. The Duke of Sussex, who spent 10 years in the British Army and performed 2 frontline tours of Afghanistan as Air Controller with the Blues and Royals on the frontline in Helmand Province, and as an Apache attack helicopter pilot during the 2-decade Western intervention. But in his statement from the Invictus Games Foundation, he did not offer any views on Joe Biden's decision to abandon the Afghans he fought alongside, or the chaotic execution of the withdrawal that saw the Taliban re-take the country in days following 20 years of war. Last year, he and Meghan were accused of wading into the U.S. election when they urged voters to reject hate speech in a message that was widely interpreted as an attack on Donald Trump and tacit support for Joe Biden's campaign. Harry has known President Biden and his wife, First Lady Jill Biden, for several years, and both have been publicly supportive of the Duke's Invictus Games. Harry and Meghan were praised by White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki after their courageous bombshell Oprah interview. When asked if the U.S. president had any reaction to the chat, Ms. Psaki said, "For anyone to come forward and speak about their own struggles with mental health and tell their own personal story, that takes courage, and that's certainly something the president believes." Amid scenes of frightened Afghans trying to flee a return to brutal Islamist theocracy after the Taliban captured the capital city Kabul, Harry and senior figures from the Games said, "What's happening in Afghanistan resonates across the international Invictus community. Many of the participating nations and competitors in the Invictus Games family are bound by a shared experience of serving in Afghanistan over the past 2 decades, and for several years, we have competed alongside Invictus Games Team Afghanistan. We encourage everybody across the Invictus network, and the wider military community, to reach out to each other and offer support for one another." February 29, 2020. Trump negotiates deal with the Taliban, setting U.S. withdrawal date for May 1, 2021. November 17, 2020. Pentagon announces it will reduce troop levels to 2,500 in Afghanistan. January 15, 2020. Inspector General reveals hubris and mendacity of U.S. efforts in Afghanistan. February 3, 2021. Afghan Study Group report warns against withdrawing irresponsibly. March Military Command makes last-ditch effort to talk Biden out of withdrawal. April 14, Biden announces withdrawal will be completed by September 11. May 4, Taliban fighters launch a major offensive on Afghan forces in southern Helmand Province. They also attack in at least 6 other provinces. May 11, the Taliban capture Nurk district just outside the capital, Kabul, as violence intensifies across the country. June 7. Senior government officials say more than 150 Afghan soldiers are killed in 24 hours as fighting worsens. They add that fighting is raging in 26 of the country's 34 provinces. June 22, Taliban fighters launch a series of attacks in the north of the country, far from their traditional strongholds in the south. The UN envoy for Afghanistan says they have taken more than 50 of 370 districts. July 2, the U.S. evacuates Bagram airfield in the middle of the night. July 5. The Taliban say they could present a written peace proposal to the Afghan government as soon as August. July 21. Taliban insurgents control about a half of the country's districts, according to the senior U.S. general, underlining the scale and speed of their advance. July 25. The United States vows to continue to support Afghan troops in the coming weeks with intensified airstrikes to help them counter Taliban attacks. July 26. The United Nations says nearly 2,400 Afghan civilians were killed or wounded in May and June in escalating violence, the highest number for those months since records started in 2009. August 6, Zaran in the south of the country becomes the first provincial capital to fall to the Taliban in years. Many more are to follow in the ensuing days, including the prized city of Kunduz in the north. August 13, Pentagon insists Kabul is not under imminent threat. August 14, the Taliban take the major northern city of Mazar-i-Sharif and, with little resistance, Pul-e-Alam, capital of Logar province, just 70 kilometers, 40 miles, south of Kabul. The United States sends more troops to help evacuate its civilians from Kabul as Afghan President Ashraf Ghani says he is consulting with local and international partners on next steps. August 15, the Taliban take the key eastern city of Jalalabad without a fight, effectively surrounding Kabul. Taliban insurgents enter Kabul, an Interior Ministry official says, as the United States evacuate diplomats from its embassy by helicopter. Kabul airport will reopen on Tuesday, U.S. officials have vowed, as extra security is drafted in to manage the evacuation of thousands of foreign nationals and Afghans trying to escape Taliban rule amid mounting fears that Islamic State could commit a terror atrocity in the country. The president defended the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, 2 decades after NATO forces invaded the country and toppled the Taliban regime following the September 11, 2001 attacks, as he blamed Donald Trump and the Afghan security services for the anarchy engulfing the country. Speaking from the White House, Biden, who had returned from his vacation at Camp David, told the American nation that the Taliban's astonishing sweep to power and seizure of the capital city Kabul this month had happened more quickly than he had anticipated. His address came as Americans woke up to images of terrified Afghans plummeting from the engines of an airborne U.S. Air Force C-17 jet above Hamid Karzai International Airport, as hundreds of other desperate locals attempted to escape the theocratic rule of the Taliban. The airport was forced to close and evacuation flights halted after at least 8 people were killed, including 2 shot dead by U.S. troops, 3 run over by taxiing planes and the 3 who fell hundreds of feet. But in a push to secure the airport, Britain and the U.S. deployed another 201,000 soldiers respectively on Monday. The deployments take the totals to around 906,000 respectively, with many troops expected to be on patrols to help keeping the capital's airport safe. It is understood there are growing Anglo-U.S. concerns that Islamists could exploit security lapses at the airport with suicide bombings, with the risk of an attack by the Khorasan province wing of Islamic State great enough for it to be discussed at Monday's emergency Cobra meeting in Downing Street. The issue has also been raised in Ministry of Defense planning meetings, The Telegraph reported. Speaking about the clashes at Hamid Karzai International Airport on Monday, one defense source told the paper, "If you are in the Pentagon or the Mod, you are looking at the scenes and thinking, that is a tragic loss of life, but what if that was an KP suicide bomber?" 3 stowaways fell hundreds of feet to their deaths after climbing onto the fuselage of a departing U.S. Air Force C-17 plane as it took off from at Hamid Karzai International Airport, while hundreds of other desperate people tried to cling onto planes as they taxied down the runway. Senior U.S. military officials said troops shot and killed 2 armed Afghans among those trying to get onto the jet, while U.S. citizens were evacuated in 2 separate incidents. A further 3 people were caught under plane wheels amid scenes of anarchy as the country slips into Taliban control. A Pentagon official said that U.S. troops had come under fire at the airfield and grounded all flights while soldiers cleared the airfield with Apache helicopters and fired warning shots to disperse the crowds. Flights resumed after 90 minutes but were suspended again after a security breach on the civilian side of the airport, a Pentagon spokesperson said. Thousands of terrified people descended on Hamid Karzai International Airport as the U.S., Britain and other Western countries evacuate their citizens and diplomats on military aircraft following the Taliban's seizure of the capital city Kabul and much of Afghanistan this week. Video posted on Twitter shows hundreds of people running alongside a C-17 crammed with 800 people. 8 times its usual capacity, with many clambering onto the front and rear wheels, while others climbed air bridges hoping to force their way onto planes waiting at the departure gates. The clip then shows 3 people falling to their deaths from hundreds of feet in the air, with images posted online later appearing to show residents collecting bodies from a rooftop in Kabul. The C-17 can carry 171,000 pounds of cargo, but its interior is designed to carry fewer than 150 soldiers. It is unclear who exactly was on board and how many Americans remain on the ground. However, a flight tracker showed the jet was flown to the Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. The first of 3 German evacuation planes en route to Afghanistan diverted to the Uzbek capital Tashkent after it could not land at Kabul Airport, a German general said on Monday. The A400M transport plane circled for more than an hour over Kabul before changing its destination, Lieutenant General Marcus Laubenthal told public broadcasters EDF. A foreign ministry spokesperson said earlier in Berlin that no evacuation flights were leaving Kabul because people were blocking the runway. A Pentagon spokesperson said 3,000 soldiers would be on the ground at the airport by Tuesday to help with the evacuation efforts, with a further 3,000 troops arriving later this week. However, the shambolic scenes further humiliated the U.S. and its NATO powers, with much of the Anglo-U.S. media and political class branding the withdrawal the biggest foreign policy disaster since Suez. U.S. media said the debacle of the U.S. defeat and chaotic retreat in Afghanistan was a political disaster and slammed the president's failure to orchestrate an urgent and orderly exit. A New York Post editorial even said his claims that he inherited Trump's withdrawal plans were a lie and branded the crisis situation as humiliating and end as the rooftop scramble in Saigon in 1975. The head of German Chancellor Angela Merkel's party, Armin Laschet, called it the biggest NATO debacle since the founding of the alliance, while MPs accused Prime Minister Boris Johnson of a shameful silence and questioned if he did enough to discourage President Biden from withdrawing U.S. troops. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said he was concerned by accounts of human rights violations against the women and girls of Afghanistan who fear a return to the darkest days of the 1990s when the Taliban came to power after the civil war and imposed a brutal theocracy. Afghanistan's representative to the UN Security Ghulam Assadsai told a meeting of the five powers, the US, Britain, China, Russia and France, on Monday that there are already reports of target killings and looting in the city. Kabul residents are reported that the Taliban have already started house searches in some neighborhoods, registering names and looking for people in their target list, he added. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has also come under fire from critics and political rivals for hightailing out of the country as the Taliban stormed the presidential palace on Sunday night. The Russian embassy claimed that he had fled in a helicopter full of cash. His whereabouts remain unknown.